Right, so in the previous video we have seen how to implement our protected route middleware, and now we have sort of completed authentication workflow, but I think it's better to implement role-based authentications as well. So role-based authentication means basically, let's say there can be having several user types in the actual systems. Let's say a user, or maybe admin, or maybe manager, or things like that. So let's say the features related to the admin may not available in the manager's user role, or the features related to the manager's user role may not be available in the default user role, right? So based on the role or based on the actor type, we can restrict certain availability for resources as well, or we can mediate the access for resources. So yeah, let's try to implement that logic as well. So let me collapse all of these functions, and yeah, so let's add another middleware called role-based authentication middleware. So basically, let's say restrict to. So this is our function name, and as usual, it's a catchy async function. Async, request, response, and next, and then the next function will be called, and yeah, yeah, maybe instead of defining this as usual catch async route, maybe we can define it in a different way. For example, let's say maybe first we can obtain the roles as a parameter, and we can then simply point it to the next function, because we don't need to do awaits related stuff at this function, right? So let's say I'm going to take some sort of user roles as parameters. So this is the spread operator that is specified as roles, which means you can now pass multiple parameters to this specific function. Then for demonstration purposes, let me lock these roles. So yeah, and then we can export this function, and let's go to the post routes, and let's import it, and maybe let's say for instance, let's say this post alls can be seen by the yeah, maybe let's say user and admin and any person like that, right? Now, yeah, what is that error? Yeah, next is not casted. Yeah, because I haven't implemented this as a middleware function, right? So simply let's return request, response, and next, and now it can point to the next, right? Yeah, now it works, and let's try to invoke this API. Yeah, now you can see that we have these user roles, user, admin, and things like that. So the logic is quite simple. So we can basically check whether our user model consists with what sort of user roles as its roles. But first we have to specify a field in the user model in order to hold those roles, right? So I think maybe over here we can specify a new field called role, and it's having the type of string, and the default value maybe it could be user, and it can have enumerated values, which means the predefined set of strings that can be considered as users, that can be considered as actor types. So let's say user, maybe admin, maybe manager, maybe let's say I don't know, maybe let's say lead, something like that. So any sort of user roles can be specified within your enumeration. And yeah, now we have roles, but I think we have to sign in again as a new user, because current document we don't have that specific role. So let's try to sign up again. Okay, now we have the role of user. If you check out your database, now we have user, and yeah, so now let's simply maybe go to our middleware function, and yeah, let's try to implement that logic. So basically what we have to do is in the request at the protected routes, if you remembered, we bound our user or current user as a request payload, right? So by default we don't have this current user in our resource request, but when it go through this protected route middleware, it basically extract these details from the database and bind it to the request body. So if I simply log inside here this request.user, you will see when I am calling this specific API, yeah, it haven't called that, right? Why was that? Let me go to the post routes. Okay, so the protected route is there. Oh yeah, I think I have called the wrong API. So post, get all post, right? So let's call it, and it says user is not exist because I have created a new account there. So I have to log in again and obtain the token, and this is the token, and let's paste that token over here, and now try to send it again. Yeah, now you can see we have this user object that is binded from that request at the protected route middleware over there, right? Now by using that request user role field, we can obtain what is the role of the user, right? So maybe a user can hold multiple roles as well. For example, let's say admin can be a manager as well, or admin can be a user as well, something like that, or manager can be a user, right? Similar fashion can be applied for any other user actor role combination, right? Therefore instead of just directly checking one value, what we can do is that we can check the value of list, right? So let's say a list of values, sorry. So yeah, we can do that by using this includes function, right? So roles is an array that we passed as a parameter set, and if it is include, request dot user dot role, it simply grant the access for us, right? But if it is not exist, then it will simply return next with a error object. Let's say you don't have permission for access this, or let's say access this resource, something like that. So for row 3, which is forbidden. Okay, but currently it simply check a one user role here, right? Because we have implemented it as just a string format in our user model. But as I said before, a user can hold different types of or maybe set of roles as well. So based on your requirements, you have to change these logics. But yeah, the core idea is exact same. And so in the post controller, no, not the post controller, but controller, we have this restrict to function, and whatever restricted by this parameter list, and if it is not included, it will simply return this error, right? So for example, maybe let's say this post all function is only restrict to the admin, so the user will be removed like that. And if I try to invoke that API, it simply says you don't have permission for access this resource because I'm an admin, right? But let's say this route is because I'm not an admin, right? But let's say this route is accessible for any sort of user, then it is restrict to user. And if I invoke it, it simply return the payloads back to me, right? Simply because I'm a user, right? See, this specific user is having the role of user, right? So that's the way how we can impose the role based authentication to our backend services. And I think authentication is now almost done, and I'll see you in the next video.